Okay, so welcome to module 2 of judging, which is how to give an oral OA, oral adjudication, or the verdict. In the previous one, we covered how to judge or how to arrive to the right call. Here we're going to cover how to best explain the right call and what are the best practices associated with that. There's going to be a separate video on personal feedback, which you can give elements of personal feedback when you are explaining the oral adjudication, but keep in mind the idea of the oral adjudication is just to give an explanation of the debate and why the ranking of the debate is the way it is. You should, in theory, be able to do it in 15 minutes or less, or less time, so that the tournament can still keep on going. It's okay if you go to 20, although most of my oral adjudications are below 15, for example. I try to keep them as time optimized as possible. And after that only I would give personal feedback and explain to people, here's how you can improve. So there'll be a separate video to this, this solely on oral adjudications. Cool. Like the previous video, what are the goals that we need to have when we're doing this? The first is to clearly communicate the decision. So this is different from reaching the decision, which we covered previously, and the ways that we do it. This is just making sure that our clients, or like the debaters themselves, clearly understand why the ranking is the way it is and can piece it together logically, holistically, whatever word you have to do it. Secondly, to do it in less than 15 minutes. So like I said, it's good to be able to explain the call in less than 15 minutes. Obviously, it's fine if you go to 20, but there are some judges that take like 30 minutes to explain the decision. This is just plain absurd. You have to be able to do it in less than 15. And finally, you have to try to show some kind of empathy to teams. Ultimately, we are human beings doing human activities. It's always pretty bad when you like receive the fourth or the third or something like that. It can be pretty demoralizing, especially if it's a room that's like a bubble room or something like that. So trying to be empathetic to people is a good thing. Obviously, we need to, at the end of the day, we're arbiters. We're trying to give what is like the correct decision, and the decision is what it is finally, but you can still be human towards one another. What you should not be, and this is very crucial. Firstly, you should not be a people pleaser. You are there to give the verdict and to give that verdict as closest to the truth as possible. You are not there to make sure that everyone like feels happy or make sure that there are no winners and losers. Inherently, when people go into debating, they consent that they may become a loser and they consent that they may become a winner. It's not your idea to try to make sure that everyone's happy and singing kumbaya or something like that. Like ultimately there is a ranking to this stuff. Like that doesn't mean you have to be an asshole. You can still show empathy to them, but you shouldn't be there. But the second thing is you shouldn't be scared about getting tanked in the score. And this is super crucial. I think this is the number one problem with judging, where people care about their score, care about breaking high, care about sharing, I don't know, a final, sharing a semifinal or something like that. And that's like wrong. Ultimately, the incentive to perform well when you're judging should come internally. You should try to reach the right call. You should try to reach the best version of the call, but not because you are accountable in a sense to what the public opinion of you is and like breaking doing these type of things. No, you should just do it because for the love of the game and the game itself. Honestly, this is very bad because it creates a pernicious incentive in many judges to, for example, do things like rep calls to teams because they're scared of being tanked. Then they provide bad feedback for you, and then you don't break because they're buddies with the CA or something like that. This is a horrible mechanism, and it shouldn't be like within people's heads. At Worlds, never did a moment that I think, oh my god, this team is gonna tank me now in the feedback, and I'm not going to break as a judge. I didn't care about that. And you could say, okay, fine, bro, you are like you have the speaker CV for it. I don't. I didn't care even before this. I never, in one singular moment, cared about like being broken and cared about this. I always split when I thought it was when I had to split. I always told teams that they didn't do a good job when they didn't do a good job, and I never had the problem of giving a reppy team a fourth or a third or whatever. Like this just should be the case. So to reiterate, we're not people pleasers. Our goal is to clearly communicate the decision, do it in less than 15 minutes, and obviously try to show empathy to the teams without, like being a people pleaser and things like that. Cool. Let's dissect each and every one of these goals, same way as we did the last video. So, time management. The first thing is obvious, but I've seen people not do it, is like just have the timer open at all times, like to track your time, similar to how you would do a debate speech. It's a very efficient way for you to follow what you're trying to explain. It's a very efficient way for you to do it. Plus, like even in discussions, you can just pull out the timer and say, "Aha!" But we're over time. We need to stop. We need to call on a vote right now. So like just simply doing that really helps you out. The second thing is for short or very clear comparisons, where basically you know that this team beats the other team with a huge margin or something like that. Just explain it faster. Like just say it the way it is. Just you shouldn't be scared. You shouldn't artificially try to make the debate seem closer than it actually is. You could just simply say very clearly this team beats that team because, for example, they had a clear argument and clear weighing, whereas the other team, I don't necessarily buy that they fully explain this argument. They have this problem with this burden, and even if it is explained, there is no weighing, whereas this team has weighing. Boom, that's done. 20 seconds. If I were to actually explain the actual things, 1 minute. And that's one comparison down. And then you can move on to the other comparisons. Whereas where comparisons are closer, you can take more time to explain these type of things. But ultimately, you shouldn't be scared of just optimizing for time. Not all comparisons are made equal, and that's the best thing. And thirdly, use disclaimers. So just tell the people, look, I won't mention everything you said. I will just mention the most important things that are crucial for each clash, because ultimately this is how we come to this decision. It is kind of like spending some money, like not some money, some time on this, but ultimately it pays you. It pays back because then you can be a lot faster when you're giving explanations and adjudications and things like that. So that's on time management. So just have a timer, explain things faster when they're clear, and give out disclaimers that you won't be talking about absolutely everything that people said. Cool. Clear communication. So the first and most important thing is just do the good old-fashioned pairwise comparisons. It's not necessary that you do this, but ultimately what you're trying to explain. You're trying to explain why. You're trying to explain opening government versus opening opposition, closing government versus opening government, closing government versus opening opposition, closing opposition versus opening opposition, closing opposition versus opening government, closing opposition versus closing government. This is like what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You need to basically do six comparisons between the teams to achieve the ranking. With some of this, you will have repetition. So, for example, if, let's say, CO and OO are running the exact same case, but with different analysis, and CG gives responses directly to this argument, which destroyed this argument, then you could say the reason closing government beats opening opposition is because they have very strong rebuttal to their case and they're in a clear rank. This is also the reason, by the way, as to why they beat closing opposition, because closing opposition runs the exact same case as opening opposition, and thus they are have the same susceptibility towards the responses in the weighing given within the round. So that way you optimize. So it's not that complex as long as you have these pairwise comparisons within your head and you fastly go through them so that you're able to do this. The second thing is just point out the obvious. I think people have a misconception towards judging because they're scared to just say things are as they are. So like if a team is able to have clear weighing against one versus another case, clear engagement, two arguments and one has responses, the other one does. Analytical superiority, their argument is just much better explained and much better impacted than the other side's argument, then those are very obvious and clear reasons as to why one team beats another team. On the opposite side of the spectrum, you also have other obvious things, like you may have analytical hills in your case, which means that I don't buy your argument. You may have zero responses or zero engagement with the other side, whereas the other side has responses towards you. You may have zero weighing of your case or explanation why you should weigh your case higher within the round. Now, ultimately, there's a spectrum here. There's super clear comparisons and not so clear comparisons, but in a debate, it's unlikely that you will have majority of debates where all of the comparisons are not clear. Like, obviously those debates exist, like that's true, but most debates, like maybe you'll have one comparison that's very tight and the other parts of the comparisons are more clearer than they should. So just to have a clear communication of the call, just communicate what are the basically you're kind of communicating the advantages and the disadvantages and how those things are interplaying between each other and why one team beats another. It's honestly, it's not that complex if you just evaluate it in this particular way. The reason people aren't doing it is because they're afraid of saying like to someone, oh, you have a hole in your case and that's why I didn't buy your case and things like that. But you shouldn't really be afraid to do that. You shouldn't be afraid of like comparing the power of different contributions within the debate. The third thing that you can do is to, and this is something we covered before, is to just point out when a clash is clear and point out when a clash is not clear. So if you were to say opening opposition clearly beats opening government in this debate, the reason for why that's the case is because they have clear weighing, clear responses towards their case, and because opening government's case is asserted. These are clear justifications for why opening opposition should beat opening government. And then you could say, but where the line becomes a bit more trickier is when we're comparing the gov bench. So in the gov bench, let's say this is a theoretical situation, although the previous video that I uploaded literally had this. Closing government runs like very narrow contributions towards opening government, which are able to slightly edge out over this. So here the reason closing government beats is less clear, so we'll go into more detail. And that's how you set up the expectations that you're going to explain this call more in detail and explain it in more nuances and things like that. And that way people understand, okay, now I have to listen to this in order to clearly understand what the call is. And here the chair will go into more details and things like that. So this like separation, it's almost like flagging within your speech if you think about it. You flag your case and you flag your framing the same as you would flag in a justification. And finally, have like the separate sheet ready. So in the previous video, if you watched it, I hope you did, I explained like having just a separate sheet where you make a cross and you outline the contributions of different teams that you can fill out either as people are speaking or, you know, when the debate is over and people are taking 1 or 2 minutes to like think what their decisions are and stuff like that, and you can write it there, so that via this separate sheet you can always remind yourself what are the core reasons as to why a team beats another team. Again, you don't have to explain all of the reasons, just what are the core reasons or the core summary of the debate. If you have trouble, like if you are new and you have trouble with like time management, like it just takes more time for you to do this, maybe filling out the ballot and then taking another minute or two to make sure that you filled out this sheet of paper so it's clearly there would be much more worthwhile to you by investing this 1 or 2 minutes to have this sheet so that you can always fall back on it, rather than, you know, the trade-off of teams waiting just a bit more longer to you. So yeah. And guys, don't worry. With experience, you'll get better. It's just trying to do it more. Like trying in order to basically improve yourself with this thing. And another thing, speaking helps a lot. Like the more you speak and the more you judge, when you do these things in combination, the better you're becoming at judging. Like the better you are at actually explaining comparisons and stuff like that. Cool. So this is how we can clearly communicate the call and clearly communicate the justification for the call. Finally, general rules of thumb. The first is use analysis that's given in the debate. Don't insert yourself. Don't try to rephrase analysis. Don't give different examples for the case. Try to be as non-interventionist as possible when you're just evaluating different contributions. By analysis, I also mean anything. It can also be rebuttal. It can also be weighing. Just use things from the actual debate. When you are doing close comparisons, but also comparisons in general, you can also steelman the losing team's case by saying like, so like that way you achieve that you're taking them at their best. As an even if strategy, you could say, okay, opening government loses to opening opposition because their case is asserted. But even if it's not asserted, I'm not particularly sure if the impact is higher than the contributions coming from opening opposition. Now, you have to be careful with this to, you know, to not be able to, so that you're not going the extra step where you are unnecessarily explaining the call more into that direction, or unnecessarily taking the other side at their best, because sometimes you can't. But as a general rule of thumb, when you want to make the reason as to why one team beats another team more clearer, you can use this as an even if strategy. And finally, try to do more with less. And this is what we talked about in the beginning. If a team is just much better than the other teams and they're clearly winning, you can just say this team has clear argumentation, clear winning, so they should win in the debate. Other teams in this debate have a problem, have this and this and that problem, so that's why they are through. And boom, you're ready. You did it in like a minute, 2 minutes. You don't need all that much time, and you've clearly explained all of these concepts. So yeah. So to reiterate, our goals are to clearly communicate the decision, do it in less than 15 minutes, and try to have empathy to teams. These are the tools that allow us to be able to do this type of things. I hope this was helpful. And yeah, best of luck when you're judging again, and see you in the next video.